Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my rant on the 1993 comic book sequel, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. This is where the franchise fell and did not get back up. Now, I will say this. This is not one of the worst films that I've seen. I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be. That being said, I'm not going to sit here and defend the film because I still think for the most part it sucks. But it's on a level of suck that is nowhere near as high as some of the other films that I've seen. The film, it's just one of those movies that really does not live up to any of the potential, and that's pretty frustrating. It's interesting to have the turtles in a different setting, to take them and put them back in another era. But they don't really do a whole lot with it. And the PG rating is just a really bad starting off point for this kind of story. If this was PG-13, then I think they could get away with a little bit more, and it could be a little bit more serious, a little bit more dramatic, and a little bit more epic. And I think then it might have been something at least good or decent. But as it is, the PG rating just cripples whatever creativity or whatever they could really do, especially with the villains. And then on top of that, because of the audience that it's trying to appeal to, which is younger audiences, you have a lot of really stupid, inane humor that just fucks with the tone of the film. So you're trying to have a somewhat serious story involving these new characters that you're trying to add to the franchise, and Mitsu and Lord Norinaga and Walker and so on, and Casey Jones's ancestor, but you're doing it in a film that has a lot of silly, stupid shit. So it just makes even the serious attempts come across as inauthentic. And you can tell that Golden Harvest at this time and New Line Cinema, they just wanted to get this shit over with. They gave this a modest budget of $17 million for the time, and I don't think most of it really wound up on the screen. I think that's an estimate, and that seems like a little bit too much. Because this does not look like a $17 million movie. And they knew that this was not going to be as successful as the first two because Turtle Power was waning in terms of the popularity of the Ninja Turtles. So they just decided to pump this one out real quick in the hope that they would at least get a quick buck out of it. And it ultimately did provide that for the studio. I mean, it made 54 million worldwide on a 21 million dollar budget, and 21 million, that's a new one. I kept hearing it's 17 million. So now it's 21 million. So I've seen other sources that say 17 million, which makes more sense. 21 million is like, you got to be fucking kidding me. Only 4 million less than Turtles 2? No, I don't see that on the screen at all, especially now with the turtle suits. And it's a shame, it really is, that this is how the live action Ninja Turtles trilogy ends, is with this wet fart of a sequel. Now, the film is directed and written by Stuart Gillard, who would go on to direct films like Rocket Man after this. No, not the Elton John biopic, not the good Rocket Man, the other Rocket Man with what's his name from Half Baked. I don't even remember his fucking name. The other guy. And not the other guy that you're thinking of, not Jim Brewer, the other guy. His name will probably come to me like some other time, but it's just not in my head at the moment. And he directed a lot of TV films and TV shows prior to getting the job for Turtles 3. And it's painfully obvious that that's the case. I said in my review of Turtles 2 that the film looked like a souped up TV movie. This looks like a straight up TV movie. This looks like a two-parter of the next mutation or some shit. Like, it really does look that cheap. And the direction here, it's just very subpar. It's a kind of direction that there really isn't anything about it that is really that impressive from a visual perspective. A lot of the transitions are even clunky. Sequences that are supposed to be epic and grand in nature just come across as com- the complete opposite most of the time. They come across as just cheap posers. It's like, oh, it's trying to be an epic movie, but then it looks like they had a budget of a million, just $1 million, and it just doesn't really work that well. I think one of the things that really hurt the film is the look of the turtles. They look emaciated. They look like they've been starved. Like they are going to co-star in The Machinist 2. Like you're just like, what the fuck happened to the turtles, man? Uh, and they all have these stupid looking faces that just does not help at all in terms of taking anything seriously or really providing a lot of genuine thoughts in anyone's mind that this film has high production values when the turtles are in a lot of their scenes looking like this. Like, I'm sorry. Like, how am I supposed to think that this is a an actual big budget theatrical affair when the turtles are all walking around like it's just like what the fuck? It's pathetic. Teenage Mutant Pathetic Turtles. So yeah, they have these stupid looking faces, and the villains are shitty. They're boring. Lord Norinaga, who? I mean, at this point, I understand why you didn't have Rat King or the Technodrome or the Mausers or Baxter Stockman or anything like that because Golden Harvest and New Line did not give enough of a fuck. That's why. If they cared more and they thought the Turtles was still a profitable franchise that had legs, they would have tried a lot harder. But they didn't feel that way, and you can tell. So that's why you just have this boring plot about them going back to Japan, which might not be that bad if you had the right person behind it in terms of the writing, or you had a little bit more of a budget, or you had a consistent tone that's a little more serious, a little grittier, a little darker. Not this, with jokes about how some guy called Raph a piece of dung, or what? Were you maybe expecting the Adams family? Stuff like that. That's you can't have a serious tone taking place in feudal Japan and then have stupid bullshit like this. So yeah, the direction is nothing remotely noteworthy to me. The action sequences are pretty flat, despite the best attempts in terms of the fight choreography to make them feel like they have some sort of impact. And it's a shame because as stupid as the turtles look in this movie and how they look like they've just been starved to death, it did enable the suit actors and performers to be more flexible in terms of the moves that they could do. But that really seems like it's completely just flushed down the toilet because the direction is just so miserable and lame. And then on top of that, you have the writing, which is just woefully inept. The writing for this film is just all kinds of bad. The jokes are cringe. There are a couple that kind of made me chuckle because of the fact that, oh, I got that reference. Like Kurt Russell, Eat Your Heart Out, or uh, a few others, but they're not really coming to my mind. But the Kurt Russell one is the one that really uh, left any sort of impression on me because I'm a big fan of Backdraft, so that was a Backdraft reference. So I thought, oh, I get it. That's kind of funny. But a lot of the other stuff is just awful, and a good majority of it is just linorama by Corey Feldman as Donatello, and you're just like, shut the fuck up, Donnie. Stop trying to turn this into a comedy special. This is not funny. None of these jokes work. Stop. Leave some jokes for Mikey, for fuck's sake, or some of the other turtles. Stop making this a one-man show, a one-turtle show. And you have some potentially interesting characters that are introduced in the script. Mitsu. I think there's a lot of potential with Mitsu. But she's brought up. She's supposed to be this leader of this resistance. She's supposed to be kind of a badass, but you never see her do shit. She shoots an arrow once or twice, and that's it. She doesn't get involved in the final battle to help the turtles fight Walker and his men. No! She doesn't even stop Lord Norinaga. She just, I guess, stands there with a thumb up her ass. I don't. She's just fucking fingering herself. I don't know what the fuck is going on. Like, why are you bringing up that character and then you do nothing with it? And I agree with other critics when they talk about other elements that are brought up that they do nothing with. Like Mikey's relationship with her. Like, that comes out of nowhere. And it's supposed to be some emotional moment at the end. And you're like, this isn't earned. Because all he did was just say one line to her at one point, and now they're kind of into each other. Like, what? Where the fuck did this come from? And then there's other stuff too. There's just a lot of stupid stuff too. Uh, why does Yoshi wind up wanting to bond with Raph instead of Mikey or Leo? I mean, Mikey and Leo are the ones that saved his life, technically. I mean, Mikey's the one that got him out of the fire, and Leo's the one that gave him mouth to mouth. Why the fuck does he want to bond with Raph? Because Raph is the more popular turtle? Okay, I get it. But why didn't Raph just be the one to save Yoshi in the fucking first place? I mean, this is screenwriting 101. Hey, Stuart. Hello, Stuart. Anybody home? A fucking airhead. Are you kidding me? Such an easy thing to get right. You bring back Casey Jones only for him to babysit a bunch of characters you never really get to know anything about other than they were honor guards for Norinaga and they're from feudal Japan. That's it. There's nothing else when it comes to their character development. So there's no reason to give a fuck about any of the scenes that they're in. And seeing Casey Jones be relegated to just a babysitter is frustrating, to say the least. Why was he even there? Oh, so Elias Koteas could get a paycheck and he could play Casey's ancestor, who's also a poorly written character because he's a turncoat and he's an asshole, and then we're supposed to care about him once he has a change of heart. The only reason why he has a change of heart is because he's probably going to get fucking killed by Walker if he doesn't try to side with the turtles. That's the only reason why he has a change of heart in the first place. To save his own ass. And speaking of ass, you have some weird scenes where the turtles are looking at April like she's a hot piece of ass. They're doing the Wayne's World thing where when she's like turning her kimono into a skirt and the turtles are going swing. You're like, this is supposed to be a kids movie, right? And you have the turtles fucking doing the Wayne's World swing thing, which I didn't get as a kid, but like as an adult, you're like, all right, I guess they want to bang April. Okay. I mean, Paige Turco is pretty hot in this movie, but it's a different kind of Turtles movie. I didn't know this was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles porno. But anyway, at least at least at least I got to look at Paige Turco in that scene, so there's some positives to be had there. I don't really think that has anything to do with the script, though. There's other issues with the script, too, like the Lord Naranaga thing and his son. Who fucking cares? The drama isn't that dramatic. It isn't that compelling. It just puts you to sleep. The the idea of the scepter, I actually don't mind. I think it's kind of cool. And having the turtles travel back in time is a different kind of thing for a movie. But once they get there, it's just a lot of bad jokes, bad action sequences, shitty villains, and not a lot of fun to really be had. So, yeah, I think Stuart Gillard did a piss poor, just awful job with the screenplay. And you didn't really get a lot of the bonding either with the brothers, with the turtles. Some of the best parts of Turtles 1 and 2 are the family moments with them bonding and riffing on one another, because you spend too much of the film with Mikey being off somewhere else, and so you don't really have the same connection. And the whole stuff with Splinter too, that's just sad. The, the scenes with Splinter are just sad. Because Splinter looks like each move that he makes sounds like it's going to be accompanied with a loud ass creak. Like you're expecting the animatronic to fall apart in like 30 seconds. And in comparison to the Jim Henson Creature Shop work in the first two films, this is a fucking disgrace. The Splinter looks that bad. Looks like he would be a part of an animatronic show at some cheap, rundown pizza parlor in the middle of fucking nowhere that would give kids nightmares. It's like Five Nights at Freddy's, eat your fucking heart out. Here's Splinter in Turtles 3. He'll make one move and then his arm will fall off and a fucking metal spring will fly out and poke a kid in the fucking eye. Uh, the fucking Splinter in the coming out of their shells tour looked better, and that still looked really bad, but this was way worse. He looked like he couldn't even move an inch without combusting into flames. And that's just a perfect encapsulation of where this franchise was at this point. Run down, creaky, and in need of repair. And there's no one there to fix what's ailing the franchise because no one fucking cares. I mean, how else do you explain why New Line and Golden Harvest, who apparently had a budget of 17 to 21 million dollars, did not use some of that to hire the Jim Henson Creature Shop back to do the effects? Instead, they went with a different company called All Effects Company, which is ironic because they can't do any effects. Well, why the hell are you calling yourself All Effects Company? Like that's the kind of name you give out when you know you can do anything. Like I can do anything well. That's why we're the All Effects Company, the All Paint Company, because we can paint all kinds of things and do it equally well. In this case, you can't do any of the effects well. So what the fuck are you doing calling yourself All Effects Company? You can't even do one effect properly. So yeah, I keep harping on the effects, but I'm sorry. It's something that is just an eyesore that sticks out like a giant green thumb. There is no getting around it. There's no avoiding it. Because from the very first few frames, you've got the turtles with their derpy faces, and they're looking like they got their souls sucked out of their fucking shells by the energy vampire from Life Force. And you're just like, oh my god, what? And then you get the Splinter, and then you're just like, holy shit, this is bad. What the fuck happened? And you see Casey Jones, and you can tell Elias Koteas is just doing it for a paycheck. And speaking of Elias Koteas, I might as well start talking about the cast. Um, Paige Turco, she does the best she can with pretty much jack shit to work with. Um, I felt bad for her actually at this point because it seems like she never really had that much to do when it comes to these movies. Like, in terms of getting involved in the action. Say whatever you want about the actress for the first film. Her name will come to me soon enough. I'm sorry. I'm a little tired. Some when that happens, my brain is a little slow in terms of picking up speed. But her last name is Hogue. I know that. So you couldn't have her reprise her role in the second film, and I guess I didn't want her to come back for the third because I wanted to have some sort of continuity. But Hogue in the first film, she had a few moments where she actually got involved in the action. It was just a little bit of like using Donnie's bow staff and hit a foot soldier in the head, but that was better than nothing. And it just seemed like April didn't really need to be there. Like, why was April even sent back in time in the first place? Um, the other actors other than Elias Koteas, Stuart Wilson as Walker, that Zorro dude, which I find funny because he actually would go on to be in The Mask of Zorro after this. He played the main villain. Don Raphael. Um, and he did a much better job in that or in No Escape than he did here. That being said, Walker is not a good villain. He's not a memorable villain, but Stuart Wilson is chewing up the scenery and he's trying. So, in scenes that he's in, I can kind of watch the film because he does a good job playing a slimy scumbag. It's just it's a very generic kind of slimy scumbag. Stewart is trying, but the material is bad. So what can he really do? John Aylward, who played Niles, who was his henchman, poor man's Ned Beatty from Superman, the movie. Just a perfect way to describe this performance and this character. Just a poor man's Otis. Sab Shimono, who is a legendary, great actor, just slumming it here as Lord Norinaga. Vivian Wu as Mitsu, who was in The Guyver. Yeah, I knew I recognized her from somewhere. I'm like, wait a second, I know I've seen her before. And she was in The Guyver. And she was better in that than she was here. Although, to be honest, she wasn't really that bad here. It's just another one of those instances where she didn't have a lot to do. Like, she was there. It seemed like she would have a bigger role. But they never really had a lot of moments where she shined. They spent a good chunk of the movie with her being the distraught, emotional mother when Yoshi was trapped in the fire and even afterwards. Because she didn't trust Leonardo because she was afraid he was going to steal his soul or something. Uh, Brian Tochi is and Corey Feldman are the only two voice actors who, well, Robbie Rist is the other one. So there's three of the voice actors who were in at least the first movie. Brian Tochi and Robbie Rist are the only two that have voiced the Turtles in all three films. Uh, Tim Kelleher comes in and he voices Raph. I don't think he's as bad as some people make him out to be in this, but it's definitely a step down from the first two voice actors. Uh, Brian Tochi, once again, did a really solid job as Leo, and Robbie Rist is the quintessential Mikey, at least for me, when it comes to his voice. Corey Feldman, though, I couldn't fucking stand in this. I hated this character. I hated the voice over work. I hated the Lino-Rama bullshit because all of the lines stunk to high heaven. Help, I'm a turtle and I can't get up. Just, can you just shut the fuck up? How about that? And the suit performers, they did fine considering the really fucking cheap, lame ass suits that they had to work with. And I will say this, I did like the fact that they did use their weapons more. I understand it's a PG film, so they weren't able to do a whole lot, but it just made it so when you did have an action sequence, it did feel like there was a little bit more to it in terms of what they could do. It also helped there wasn't a lot of cartoon sound effects and stuff like that. Um, that being said, it is a lot of blocking and it is a lot of um, defensive moves on their part with their weapons, but I just preferred that over combat cold cuts. Doesn't save the film, but it was admittedly nice to see them use weapons again. From a technical perspective, the cinematography at times it looks muddy and just bland and just really dull and really not that big in terms of the size and scope. what's crazy is like the first shot of the film, which is of the rising sun, which is, of course, a reference to Japan's flag, which is the rising sun. Um, this rising sun at night, or was it like a sunset or something? I don't remember exactly what time of day it was, but it was a really nice looking shot with all three of the honor guard riding on their horses. And I was like, "Whoa, okay, maybe this film isn't that bad." And then immediately the color of the film changes because with that shot, it looked really good. It was a nice contrast of like reds and oranges. And then it just turns shit brown, which it's fitting. It's fitting because the film is, for the most part, a big giant piece of turtle shit. So it kind of makes sense that it would go from promising and then in a matter of seconds to shit. So yeah, just not a fan of the cinematography, even though there are some moments where it looks nice. Uh, the editing by William D. Gordine and James R. Simons. There are times where the transitions are just really trying too hard to be full of extra amounts of energy. So they're trying to be more comic book in nature and with like flips and other stuff like that, and I don't really care for it. It's just kind of an eyesore and kind of irritating. Although it doesn't do that all the time, but there are moments where it just I'm not really a fan of that kind of those kind of transitions most of the time. In the editing, there are some scenes where they kind of just linger on some shots, or there's stuff that could be edited out. Like there are a lot of shots of the turtles where they already look bad enough, but when you see shots where like one of the turtles' eyes is like looking this way and the other one's you're just like, couldn't you edit that out? Couldn't you do another take? Maybe that's not an editing thing. That's more of a production um deal in terms of the overall production. Um but yeah, there are shots where the turtles you're just like, what the fuck is wrong with this what with that turtle? Looks like he had a fucking stroke. Uh the music by John Du Perez, surprisingly, it's bad. Like I liked the score for the first two films. I liked it quite a bit actually. There's a couple moments where he's trying to throw in a little bit of the same notes from the first two, but he's trying to do his own thing that's inspired by other Asian films, other Japanese samurai pictures, and it just comes across as incredibly generic and forgettable most of the time, which is a shame because he's a very talented composer. The film is actually the longest out of the first two films, and it definitely does feel like it. 96 minutes is too long for this movie. Because I think it really has to do with a lot of scenes that are just dialogue and people talking and exposition and other stuff in terms of the script where they're trying to pull a rope a dope or whatever on you, but they just fail miserably, like pretty much the rest of the movie. Like the scepter, they made a scepter, and Donnie or one of the turtles drops it down a well. So oh no, they're not gonna make it back home, and Yoshi all of a sudden has the scepter now, but then it gets taken, and then you're just like, we know that they're going to get the scepter back and they're going to go back into modern time. Like, why are we trying to do this? That's another problem with the plot, is that I think this plot works better as like an episode of the cartoon that's like 20 minutes. As an hour and a half, there really isn't enough there to keep you fully captivated and engaged, because there's just a lot of stuff where like you know where this is going. They're going to get the scepter back. They're going to go back in time. They're going to stop Walker. They're going to stop Norinaga. Whatever. And that might be something you can work around if the structure is sound. But if the structure is built on piles of shit, well, that's not going to be a very sound structure. It's just going to sink into a mountain of dung. And trying to think of anything else to mention about this movie. There were some other like really surprisingly dated references in terms of the jokes. Like early on there's references to, and also near the end, references to Elvis Presley in Blue Hawaii. Like what kid in 93 is going to know what the fuck Blue Hawaii is? Or even going to remember Elvis Presley? Like really? Speaking of other what the fuck things, on IMDb right now, at least at the time of this recording, this movie has the subtitle of The Sacred Scrolls of Death. What? What the fuck? The Sacred Scrolls of Death? Somebody at IMDb has been smoking too many scrolls. The Sacred Scrolls of Death? There is no Sacred Scroll of Death. Well, I think it's called the Sacred Scroll of Death, not the Sacred Scrolls. I guess I've been smoking too many scrolls. Can you blame me? Probably did. I did that to try to forget Turtles 3, but yeah, what the Sacred Scroll of Death? Apparently, that's a subtitle on a trading card in a set for this film. Okay, but since when has it ever been called the Sacred Scroll of Death? This is not an Indiana Jones spin-off with the Turtles. That might be better, actually. Uh, at least in a what the fuck kind of way. Turtles go on some archaeological expedition and try to stop Nazis from getting a sacred scroll of death. You're like, what the fuck? All right. Man, this franchise took a serious left turn. But yeah, as you can see, I'm already talking about other stuff. I'm pretty much done with Turtles 3. It's one of those films, I used to like it as a kid because I was a kid and I didn't know any better. As an adult, it's hard to sit through because the plot isn't really that interesting, despite an interesting idea. The turtles themselves, they look emaciated and they look like Shang Tsung stole their souls. And there's a lot of other extra characters that don't really amount to much of anything, at least of added intrigue in that regard. It's a slow paced film because there's not a lot of action, and when it is there, it doesn't really leave really that much of a lasting impression. And I think a good way to sum it up is after it's over, you feel like you've been given a wet willy. It's gross, it's slimy, and it's uncomfortable, and you want it to be over with quickly. Uh, and that's really a good way to sum it up. It is. It's just like a massive, giant wet willy of a movie.